Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Story Mechanics. It's a new show we've got here going at BillWhittle.com. We're going to be taking a look at all different aspects of movie making and storytelling and all the rest of it. And needless to say, we've been holding off on this show for a while, been waiting to get our hands on a genuine celebrity, to really kick the show off right. Somebody, well known and well beloved by the public, and somebody who could make a, big splash. We weren't able to pull that off, obviously, but we do have Mike Rowe with us today. And Mike, good to see you. Thanks for stepping in on 6-minute notice. We really appreciate it.
I was hoping you were going to say well-liked instead of well-beloved, because then I could have made a very clever Willy Loman reference and got us right out of the gate.
The well-liked Mike Rowe.
Liked, but not well-liked. That was the curse of Willy Loman, and it's certainly a consummation to aspire above.
The thing that's actually great about starting with you is this. Over the course of this series, I want to talk about all different aspects of, filmmaking and just plays, everything. But the great thing about starting with you is we get to start with the absolute bare bones essence, which is the story. I mean, the story is everything. And love to kid you about it, but you are absolutely the master storyteller. There's very, very few people who can sit down at a microphone and hold people's interests with just the words of the story. So what I wanted to start this entire series about was this idea that when you really get down to it, everything is a story. All the learning we do is a story. Everything in the Bible is a story. Aesop's tales are a story. All the morality plays that we get are stories. Whether we should do right or wrong is based on stories. And what seems to be, even if you take a look, for example, like a history teacher, a good history teacher, a teacher who can make you remember history, is a teacher who will tell you a story about history that you remember, as opposed to somebody who's just going to come in with, 1846, this is what happened and that's what happened. What do you think the essence of the story is? I think the one thing that the only thing that a story can't be is boring, right? I mean, anything else is pretty much on the table.
Well, unfortunately, it can be boring. We're surrounded by boring stories. Stories that come in hot and don't really ever land, stories that are maybe 2, 3, or 10 times longer than they need to be. There are just so many things that I think are worth pivoting on, and I'm struggling to come up with something new, and that's the hell of it. I don't think there is anything new. I would wager that by the end of this series, certainly by the end of this conversation, we won't have stumbled across a new thing, but I bet we will stumble across some things whose time has reemerged. It's a wheel, right? And like
yes.
The old song says, everything old is new again. And when you talk about history teachers, you're talking about my dad. He taught 8th, 9th, and 10th grade history for 35 years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and when you talk about the word history, I mean, what is it? 2 simple syllables.
Yeah, his story.
Yeah. So, a lot to unpack.
So let's, you were talking about going full circle. When you see these blockbuster movies, and you've got all of these special effects, and people go to the movie and they come out and they just sense, okay, I don't remember any of it. I remember when I did one of your shows, I was talking about my acting professor, David Shelton, and he basically said that there's not a movie that should ever be made that should not first be performed at a black box theater with the actors sitting on stools, wearing black turtlenecks, just reading the script. Because if that story doesn't grab you in terms of what the characters are saying and what the screen direction is telling you, then you're probably wasting your $450 million. Probably should have hired a writer.
Think about the Fantastics.
It costs less than that.
Think about the Fantastics, right? I mean, that was a big play in the 60s and 70s. The writer of that play basically did exactly what you just presupposed should happen. They just stripped everything away. Our Town, Thornton Wilder, did the same thing. Just what happens if you get rid of all of the pretense? What happens if you get rid of all of the tropes and the platitudes and all of the intentionality that somehow became valued and then overvalued with blockbusters and cartoons brought to life and all that stuff? I was thinking during my ruck this morning, which is why I'm late. Thanks for your patience. I'm still sitting here flop sweating like a whore in church.
I've never denied a friend his rucking time.
But when I think about stripping out all of the artifice from a movie to basically distill it to its guts, I also think about everything wrong with reality TV today is the proximate cause of some scripted producer or some scripted editor or some scripted actors, for that matter, dragging all of that into this new space and infecting it with the intentionality that can bitch up.
And the artificiality,
Yeah.
One of the things I've found about storytelling is that it is almost always about individuals. We often live in a world where collectivism is worshipped, but nobody ever tells a story about a collective. No one ever has a story about the committee to, stop worldwide international crime. James Bond doesn't approach the supervillain with a harshly worded letter from the United Nations and then drive off in a Prius at a reasonable speed. It's about a guy with a gun and a hot girl and a fast car. And even when you tell a story about a group, like a football story, like We Are Marshall, for example, you still have to pick. You have 40 people on the team. You got to take, the quarterback who had his big opportunity and maybe has a final shot. There's the poor kid from the projects. This is his one chance to break out. You're going to take 3 or 4 individual stories and make something out of it, because you cannot tell a story about a group of people. I don't even really know why that is so much as it's just. Maybe it's just too many intersecting pathways.
It's too much. Look, I think there's a micro macro component to most good stories. The macro, of course, is the ability to dance with some large universal themes, and the micro, all punning aside, is your ability to distill it to the individual. And so, my favorite stories always sort of blend those two in some way to a degree that satisfies me. Sometimes I want more macro. I'm because I'm a fan of history. I watched the Titanic with a keen eye toward the days and the dates and a bunch of things that probably don't really matter too much. But I was fascinated by the architecture of the boat and the conditions on the day and all of the circumstantial stuff, all the macro stuff that lives on in the details. But, that movie made more than any other movie because you just broke it all the way down to Jack Dawson. He was just a kid trying to get across the pond. We start with a gambling scene. We start with risk. And then we get to love. And then we get to, look, say what you want about Cameron. We don't see eye to eye on plenty of stuff, I guess. But, man, he reminded me in the midst of that story that there are only half a dozen stories to tell.
That's right.
There are only half a dozen.
I think there's 7 classic stories.
Yeah.
Here's something that you might have to explain yourself away on a little bit, Michael. They took a look at, I've seen a number of experiments on this. It was done on young children. And they took a look at kids and told them to tell a lie to other kids. And it turned out that the kids who were the best storytellers were the biggest liars. And they were just naturally good at it. So all acting is really lying. I'm not saying that storytelling is lying, but you have to inhabit, you have to.
I'll say it.
Let's go.
Storytelling is lying.
Okay.
It's not deceiving, but again, in the interest of no new ideas and no new tropes, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. Yeah, I don't turn on the news to hear stories. I turn on the news to get facts. I look to journalists to inform me, and then I can go to another place, to another level, to get more insight, more point of view, and so forth. If I want a story, I'll pick up Mark Twain. I'll pick up David Sedaris.
I'm so glad you mentioned Twain. We're going to be talking about him a little bit today.
Take me on a trip. I remember years ago, Sedaris was criticized pretty roundly for exaggerating the qualities of his family members. And he said, well, what do you think Mark Twain did? Do you think that Jumping Frog in Calaveras County was anything other than just a figment of his? I mean, why do you read my books? Why do you pick this book up? Sedaris was smart because he wrote biographically, in a way that I think the reader would assume would be true because, my God, his family's still alive and walking around for the most part. Mm-hmm. But in the end, he knew that the mundane reality of most of our lives can be immeasurably heightened by a good story. You don't pull facts out of thin air necessarily, but everything becomes a slight exaggeration. It's why my podcast is called The Way I Heard It.
Absolutely. And all of the great stories that I love to tell about things that actually happened to me, when I think about how they actually happened to me, they're not nearly as interesting. And nobody wants them to be, what you really want. You want your characters to be, you want them to be more clever than real people talking, and you want to just get to the fun of it, I guess is what I'm saying.
You want to see a more interesting version of yourself.
Yes, that's right. I noticed something. I was thinking about Mark Twain about this too. And I let me just sort of run this backwards. The conclusion I came to is that you can be a monologuist and you can do a monologue and be a bastard, but a genuine storyteller seems to have to love people. I'm not talking about a writer now. I'm talking about a person who gets up and actually tells the story. And that's one of the things about Twain that was so remarkable. And I think it was his friend Howells who said that the quality that makes a great writer and the quality that makes a great speaker are so opposite to each other that the idea that Twain could do both of them was almost supernatural. But that's the kind of storytelling I'm talking about, the kind of storytelling that you're doing, because when you tell your stories, it's clear you not only love the story, but you love the people you're telling the story to. You're not lecturing us, and you're not monologuing us. It's a weird sort of thing, Mike. It's an interactive thing, but there's no interaction. But it's got that feeling, That's, I guess what I'm trying to say is very simple. A great storyteller will always make the person listening feel like he's talking directly to that person, and even if it's a room full of people, you can pull that off.
So thank you. That's some high cotton. The first time I heard that compliment directed towards somebody, it was Frank Sinatra. And of course, I would say 98% of the songs Sinatra sang are pure stories. And he would stand on a stage at Madison Square Garden, and you could be in the last row. And son of a bitch if you didn't think that guy was talking to you. Right to you. That's micro and macro at the same time. Throw in some music and you get a slightly different set of muscles, a different card to play. But look, I think you're really onto something interesting about the line between a written story presented or a tale pulled out of your butt and told. 2 days ago, I was in Vegas, and I've been on this speaking jag. I spoke over the course of a week to 4,000 people at Jersey Mike's, and then I spoke to 5,000 people at the Pike Corporation, which is a giant electric company out of the southeast. And then I wound up speaking in Vegas 2 days ago in the MGM Theater. Sold out. Must have been 11,000 people there.
It's impressive.
And I'm in the center of a thing that spins, and there's cannons that shoot fire and smoke. And it was one of these 10X events, right, where people pay to go. And it's not some big corporate thing, but there were a lot of people there. And I had 90 minutes, and all they wanted to hear were some stories. So, in between these events in my hotel room, I'm writing new episodes of The Way I Heard It, which are 10-minute stories told from the inside out in the Paul Harvey style.
Yep.
So here's my point. If I'm lucky or blessed, and I think I'm both, it's because I get to I'll never fill the shoes of Paul Harvey or Spalding Gray, but to follow in their footsteps is a great privilege and a great challenge. And at the same time, to go out there in front of a bunch of people without a net and drag 11,000 strangers through the sewer, or walk them through the detail of coaxing the sperm out of a Brahmin bull named Hunsucker Commando, and then talk in greater detail about the complexities of getting the Discovery Channel to actually put that on in prime time, and then to land the plane around a giant sea change in the future farmers of America and the way that big organizations started talking about where our food came from as a result of artificial insemination, which I snuck on the air on the Discovery Channel when nobody was looking. So, like, all of these different things, Bill, come down to the same basic question. Where are you going to start? Where are you going to end? And are you going to keep anybody's attention in the middle?
Hunsucker Commando was my high school nickname. It's just a weird coincidence.
I knew there was something about you that was familiar. I just did not think it had...
Not that familiar.
Not that familiar.
Did you know that vigorous mouse clicking can burn over 700 calories an hour? It's true. Hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell, and we'll see you next time.